in the post-race interview, to date, I think it's probably one of the best interviews that I've done. It wasn't easy at all. And like having to hold back those emotions and sort of explain how everything was from a personal side, but a respectable, because at the end of the day, you have to also commend the other guys that did a good job.
Welcome to The Pass Track Talks, the ultimate traveling podcast for motorsport stories.
We are Nicole and Mattia, and together we wish to narrate the characters of the little big world that we're so passionate about.
We meet the drivers as well as the insiders directly at the racetracks, and throughout our unfiltered talks, behind-the-scenes anecdotes, pure emotions, and fragments of intense life emerge, together with the universal values that characterize this discipline.
Because in some way, the pass is also about you. Enjoy.
Hello and welcome to a new episode of The Pass Track Talks. I'm Mattia Livraghi,
I'm Nicole Miotta.
and today we're here in Monza, at the Autodromo Nazionale Monza, and we have the pleasure of having with us Alex Powell.
Thank you for having me. I'm very much looking forward to it.
Thank you for being here with us. It's a real pleasure and also an honor because I watched you through karting and now you just moved up to Formula Cars, and today you were here testing. But we will not speak about testing because we're here to speak about your story. So we can't wait.
Yeah.
And I think, we would like to start from the beginning. Why are you here racing?
How did it happen?
Yeah.
Well, it's a long story. It's a very, very long story. So I'll go back to the very beginning. So obviously, when I was a bit younger, I lived in Trinidad and Tobago, which is in the Caribbean. And I got inspired by my dad because my dad was always the one that was racing, and he was a motorsports enthusiast.
He raced.
So he raced. He was in raced against the clock, put it that way, because he was in rallying. He was in rallying, and rallying, obviously you're not racing against each other. You're racing against time, right? So he was more nationally that he did it, but he went and did a few events in Europe, which I thought was pretty cool. And in South America, he did a bit, and in America, I think he did a few times, but I'm not so sure. But he was the one that was always into motorsport. So it was like from the beginning, I was sort of brought up into it. But realistically, we didn't have any motorsport background because his dad never allowed him to pursue motorsport when he was young. He was more into, school until you're 18, 19, and then obviously go and make a living in something else. So unfortunately for my dad, he never got the opportunity to do anything until he was a little bit older. And by that point, it was too late for him. So fortunately for me, he allowed me to, and he and my mom allowed me to pursue my dream of being a driver in motorsport, which I think is such a cool experience to have, to be involved in this world of motorsport, because there's so many things that are hidden from the normal eye, and only when you start to go into the ins and outs of motorsports is when you really discover everything. So yeah, going back to how I started, it just originated from my dad, and then when I was 6.5, I think, he took me to the track for the first time, and from the very first time I loved it. It was
first sight.
It was love it. Yeah. I mean, from the first laps, I wasn't stopping. I was just continuing going.
So you remember that time very well.
Yeah. And I mean, also my dad helps me remember it a bit because they were all there watching. So obviously memory isn't too good from back then, but I remember the experience for the first time. Generally driving, I don't remember it, but the experience, I remember it. And that's a vivid memory that stays in my mind. And from then I knew, okay, this is what I want to do. I didn't know what I was getting myself into because obviously I didn't know anything from motorsport at that time. But I think I made the right choice, and I'm glad that I was able to make that choice back then. And then it just sort of escalated from there. It was starting in the Trinidad and Tobago, which was in a car park, may I add. We didn't actually have a track.
I was going to ask you if you had tracks, because...
So what we did was... generally, they even do it now. Once a month, they have a race there. So it's 12 events a year, or 10, something like that. I'm not too sure. But it's sort of just like a paved parking lot almost, and they have to sweep. Yeah, they sweep the track. They sweep the track in the morning, or I'm not sure if they do it now, but when we were there, we used to have to sweep the track and go over it a bit with cars to get some of the dust off, to clean it. And there was just barriers around, and obviously we didn't have enough barriers to make a proper track, so we'd have like one barrier, and then 100 meters later was another. So it was just sort of like an outline of a track.
Wow.
So it wasn't. So it was from very humble beginnings, very very humble beginnings. So yeah,
that was one of our first curiosities, because how is it to come from a country that doesn't have a racing background, like, and then you moved up to higher levels, you moved to Europe, but I mean, now that you recall those moments, this beginning, do you feel that, because obviously one could say maybe it was a bit of a like disadvantage, because maybe a child who's born in Italy or in Europe has more of a simple beginning, let's say like this, but actually
it's
maybe
easier to find a track.
Yeah, but maybe recalling now those moments, you feel that it's also your drive, I call it, no?
yeah, of course, because obviously in retrospect, when you look back on it, it's I think it's pretty cool, because if you know, looking at it from that aspect, we came from pretty much nothing, and as you mentioned, there's no motorsport background, or very minimal motorsport background. In Trinidad and in the Caribbean, we're trying to build it, and it's been quite strong, but the only problem is it stayed very much within the Caribbean. So the problem is, you know, starting to get out and to you know, expose the Caribbean to racing, and on the highest level. I think a few people have done it, which is really cool, to see that, you know, there's an opportunity. Even if you start, for example, we take my case, starting from Trinidad in a car park with zero, with zero grip on the track, dust everywhere. And yeah, as I told you, it's once a month. They take out everything, they sweep the track, we go over it.
This is crazy
with the road car.
Think about it.
With the road car, and you just drive, you know, with stock engines, obviously, tires that are probably 5-6 years old.
Imagine
who knows?
if they tried it here. They could
yeah,
never
no,
do
exactly.
it.
Yeah,
No.
exactly.
There would
It's
be
Not the
too
drivers,
much.
not the drivers that
No,
race
I don't mean
in
the
the
drivers. I mean the whole organization. Everyone would be like
shocked.
shocked.
But actually, you know that in Pavia, near the Seven Lakes Circuit,
Yep.
Castelletto, there is like close to there is a very nice restaurant. If you go there, Zodiacos, it's the name, and they have a big car park, and they actually organize. Massimo told me, my mechanic, told me that they do organize like a sort of karting race, amateur level, with the barriers. They do some, but I think it's more of a like not a
Friends
race.
and family.
Yeah, maybe more of that. I never saw it. They told me, so that's curious.
Yeah, so I think it just makes me appreciate what I was able to come from, and, you know, go to, fortunately, you know, being in the position that I am now, that, you know, I was able to go through the ranks. But it in retrospect, I appreciate those moments so much more, and I think it's it obviously, when you're telling the story, it's like you, and it's, you can't believe it when you hear it. So I think, obviously, yeah, coming from Europe, it's a bit more simple, I guess, to start off, than obviously coming from a country that the motorsport is quite small. So it I think it's cool, and it's something that, you know, you look back on, and it gives you like an extra bit of motivation, more drive to continue going, because knowing,
Look at where
yeah,
I started.
where we started and where we are now, and everything that's gone, that you've been through in that time, I think it just sort of, it gives you that extra bit of motivation that, you know, maybe for other people they might not get from a memory or from something like that. Which, I keep saying it, but in retrospect, I think it's such a uh, a great thing to look back on, because it's it's incredible to. It's also a good thing for the upcoming kids that are now, I don't know, 6-7 years old, back home, to see that, okay, there is a path, even though there's no, you know, huge motorsport in the Caribbean.
Yeah.
There is a path, and there is a way of getting there. So
But
I think that's pretty cool.
That is very cool, and it's nice to hear you while you're talking about it. Also, seeing your eyes, you feel that you can feel this attachment. But do you receive like a lot of support? I'm not talking about financial support. I'm talking about like in general. Does your country back there support you a lot? Or because I mean, on one side, it's difficult to grow, I think, in a country that doesn't have a racing background. On the other side, I imagine it's not something I know, but maybe being few people that
You're
maybe
unique.
yeah, and so maybe your country is also very proud of what you do and follows you, supports you.
Yeah, of course. I mean, in terms of, I think it's more the support that you get from the people back home. I think that's the biggest thing because they're always sending you messages. They're always watching. They always send me pictures of when the race is on, even though they're 6-7 hours behind us in the time zone. They'll be up at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning watching the race. And that's just them that some of them haven't seen me for 5 years, 6 years because it's been so difficult to go back to Trinidad. Which is where I started the racing. So this is talking more on Trinidad, not Jamaica just yet.
Yeah, sure.
But yeah, I mean, I think that side of thing is the biggest sort of support that I get because it's people that helped me in the very beginning, and it's so nice to see that even now, 8, 9, 10 years later, they are still supporting and they're still watching. So I think from that side, yes, you're unique. So you do get a lot of people following, and when you do perform well, it does get published all around, which is really nice as well.
Wow.
So yeah, from that aspect, it's good because yeah, you are one of very few people. So yeah, I think from that way, it's a nice way of looking at it. Yeah.
Do you also feel maybe a little bit pressured about it, or it's just a positive thing?
No, I think it's more positive because I think pressure can come from, it's more from yourself. I think the pressure can come from because if you're sort of thinking, oh, I'm the only one and my whole country's behind me watching me hoping that I can perform, then you put yourself under pressure a bit unnecessarily. Because at the end it's the truth, but if you don't really think about it, then it's a bit better. So yeah, I mean, of course, if you want to think about it, the pressure's there. Okay. But I think it's best to not think about it. And generally, I don't think about it, which is good. Because already you have, just general pressure from other aspects, and you have a pressure from yourself that you can perform to a certain level. So I think that's another side of it. It's the pressure that you put on yourself. There's no reason to put unnecessary extra pressure. Yeah. So I think yes and no. There can be two ways of looking at it, to be honest.
It depends on the perspective.
Yeah, it's very much on the perspective and how you look on it.
But you were born in Miami, right?
So yes, it's quite. This is a complicated topic at the moment. No. So I was born in Miami.
Okay.
And I didn't stay there very long because I moved to Trinidad and Tobago, which was where my parents' business was.
Oh, okay.
So that was the reason that we moved there. So I moved, I think, when I was 3 weeks old, 2 weeks old, something like that. So it was like
yeah, I don't think
yeah, no, I hope I wouldn't. So it was I pretty much grew up in Trinidad and Tobago until I was around 10 years old. So this sort of ties back into the story that I was giving you from how we started before. It was so obviously starting in Trinidad, and then we moved to racing a bit in Barbados, which actually I was racing at the time with Zane Maloney, which is now he's in
from Barbados.
Yeah, the boy from Barbados. And now it's so great to see him doing what he's doing last year and now this year in F2. And there was another kid there, Kiffin Simpson, who now next year is driving an IndyCar.
Yeah, he raced in karting.
He did, yeah. He raced in karting, and he's doing LMP something. I don't know if I'm wrong, or I think maybe I'm wrong, but I know he's doing I know he signed obviously for IndyCar next year, which is I guess looking at that now, we were all so young back then, and looking at it now, we have one in Formula 2, one in IndyCar next year, and myself that's trying as well to follow what they've done. So yeah, just looking at it now, it's so great to see. And as I mentioned before, building the motorsport in general in the Caribbean, it's good that now there's
more people are starting.
More people, exactly. There's more people. Whereas unfortunately in the past it was a bit more limited. So yeah, it's crazy to see that they've done what they've done, and hopefully I can follow a bit what they've been through. So yeah, obviously going back to the topic that I was on before from Barbados.
Yeah.
Then we moved to racing in the United States.
Oh, okay. So you went.
Yeah.
But was there a reason, or
it was more because, if we look at it, it was not really that many races that I was having, because in Trinidad, as I mentioned, it was once a month, and sometimes they wouldn't even have it. So then
you didn't train because
no, that wasn't a thing. I mean, for us, it was arrive to the race and send it. So yeah, exactly. No training, nothing. So then, obviously, as it stopped becoming a hobby and more of a, okay, this is what I want to do in the future, then the perspective and the view on things changed quite a lot. It went from, okay, we'll race in Barbados once a week to, okay, we'll race in Barbados this week, and then we'll go test in North Carolina next week, and we'll go race in Homestead in Miami the week after. So it sort of just started ramping up a bit, to the point where we stopped racing in Barbados and we put all the focus into racing in the United States, which at that time the level was quite good.
Okay.
So I was able to, obviously, because I was a newcomer, I was able to improve and learn from the other guys. So that was what we did for about a year and a half or so, until the end of 2017 now. I'm going very deep into the story. Very
we love it. We love it.
The end of 2017, there was a race in Las Vegas, the Supernats. Yeah, Supernats, which I think is such a cool event. That event is
I would love to go there to watch.
Yeah, because I think they're having it this weekend or next weekend, something like that.
Yeah, because now there's the Rock Vegas this week. Yeah. Well, then this episode will probably come out a bit later, but
yeah,
November, that kind of period.
Yeah, so I think that event, just being in Las Vegas, I mean, it's
racing,
just racing in Las Vegas, and then you're racing in the car park right outside the hotel. I think that's such a cool experience that I think
the car park in
yeah, exactly. It was a bit of an advantage, to be honest. A bit.
You were an expert.
Yeah, exactly.
Circuit.
Exactly. So the end of 2017, the owner of Energy, Mick Panagata, he was there at the race, and fortunately for myself, I was able to do decent. So he was the one that sort of mentioned to us to go over to Europe the following year to try and do a few tests to sort out and see how we were, assess where I was. And okay, we came over the following year, and it was just a 1-day test. And in the morning, it was completely wet.
Lonato.
It was in Lonato, completely wet. And obviously, for myself, I'd only driven. I had driven, but coming from the US, and then also from the Caribbean, the rain that we had was super limited. I mean, not that much driving at all in the rain. And I thought I was quite good in the rain, to be honest, until I went there. Anyway, we did the first half of the day that was completely wet, and it was a disaster. It was so bad. I was so slow, just because obviously I thought I was good, but I definitely wasn't very good in the wet at all. So we sort of were a bit concerned halfway through the day, and luckily it dried out in the afternoon, and I was able to do quite well. So I think it's quite funny, because if you look at the morning, it was, I don't think you could have gone much slower than I actually went. But then if you look in the afternoon, it was like it was a good experience for me to sort of see where I was in the morning, and then the step that we made in the afternoon. it was probably better for myself because it sort of, they weren't really expecting it. So I think that's a pretty cool.
Now, this is crazy because Alex, sorry, I do this little like, I sorry, I didn't want to interrupt you, Alex, but just it's like a little anecdote because every time I saw you on the track in karting, I always found you very analytical, very precise, talking to me. You explained to me about the session, about the track, and it's crazy that now, I mean, it's 2023, 2017, it's already 6 years ago, and it was the beginning, and you still so analytical about that first day. And it's crazy. I really like this thing, and I think it shows how much you care about this.
Yeah.
I mean, you really see you want to do your best, you want to be fast. But I must imagine, like as a kid, when you arrive in Italy the first time, and probably it's also a bit of already, I don't know, a sort of dream that you're moving so far away to like pursue your passion and also to chase your dream. And then you arrive, it rains, you think you're good, and then disaster. How do you feel as a kid? Because I mean, I remember when I was little, and I always raced in Italy, always like never something like that. But I remember the days I was very slow. I really felt bad. So how do you react to that?
I think it can be one of two ways. I think back then I didn't really understand the importance of that day, to be honest. I only look back on it and think, wow, that was an important day. And fortunately, in the afternoon, I did quite well. But at that time, I didn't fully appreciate how meaningful this day was going to be for the next few years of my go-karting career. So I didn't really think too much of it in the morning, to be honest. It's difficult to remember from so long ago. But I don't think I thought too much of it just because I wasn't aware of the importance that they held. But then, yeah, in the afternoon, I drove like normal. I mean, it wasn't anything different. So it was only after looking back on it, thinking, wow, that was important for me to get on with it in the afternoon. Although I remember my dad during lunch saying, Alex, you do something in the afternoon, because in the morning it was, yeah, as I told you, it was not very good at all. So that I do remember my dad telling me to hurry up, to get on with it.
Was your dad like strict?
Yeah, he was and is. But at the end, it's because he knows what I can do, and when I don't do it, I mean, he only wants the best for me. So yes, at times there's quite a lot of tension, but I think that goes for everybody. Because I think if you're not getting pushed by those people around you, then maybe they're not too enthusiastic for you doing what you are doing. So
if they care a lot,
exactly, if they care, they will even if it's getting angry at you or ripping into you for doing something, it's the best thing. And especially in the beginning for me, that was super important, because sometimes I would just go out and drive and not give 100%. I'm talking very beginning.
Sure.
And just drive like normal, just driving around and not giving any effort. And I think that was important, and I got screamed at many times for it. But I think it was important to build me as a person, as also as a driver for the future, because it shows that every time you go on the track, you have to give 110%. Because if you do that, then you are able to do you're capable to do a good result. So that was that's something that I think was good, that anytime I didn't give my best, when I came off the track, I knew that I didn't do it, because I got told off, yeah, a few times. But yeah, it's just good that they were able to do that, because at the end it just made me better in that area. So
made you mature.
Exactly. It made me mature and realize, okay, it's a sacrifice for everybody. and you can understand, when you don't give your best, how the other people feel, because racing is something that it's not only what you do on the weekends. It's everything that you do beforehand. So it's the preparation before the race weekend, but it's also like mental preparation, not only physical preparation. So it's when the other guys are, having their time off, what are you doing to get ahead of them? So I think that's one thing that you're always preparing, and all the people around you. In my case, for example, now we live here in Monza, and I feel the responsibility to always, it pushes me even more to give my best 100% of the time, because my whole family lives here now, and we are in an apartment here for the past 4 years, which, if it wasn't for my racing, we would have never been here. We would have still been probably back home in the Caribbean. So
do you miss being home?
I miss it. It's difficult for me to imagine how it would have been if I would have stayed there and sort of, grew up there. Or grew up, do the last 5 years that now I've been in Italy and 4 years here in Monza. It's difficult for me to imagine how my life would have been different if we would have stayed there. But yeah, obviously we're here now. We are here in living in Italy. So I think it gives me more motivation to continue going, because a lot of the people that I'm racing against, they are from Europe. So okay, on Sunday night they fly home to where they've been living for the past, well, since they were born, their whole life. Which for me now is here. So it's definitely not the same, but I think it makes me at least want to push even harder to get a step ahead of them, because as I mentioned, I think in every sport is the same thing, but it's not only the work that you do on the race weekend, it's everything that goes on behind the scenes and before the race weekend.
This is really important for us to hear, and it's actually why also we started this podcast, as I was saying, because we want to show behind the scenes. We want to kind of open up the doors of this world that is so different and so strange, no? Yeah. And you were speaking about all the mental preparation, and so I ask, how much have you worked also on the mental side, and also not only strictly relating to racing, but also just the living here, okay? Because as you say, maybe we can't even fully understand what it means to be so far away from home, to have completely a different life. Because now you say, I can't imagine what it would have been like to grow there. But honestly, I think you still feel that you're here. And I hope you like it here, also like life, also when you're not on track. But it must be anyway strange. Also, maybe with social relationships, this is something we're also curious about. How is it?
Yeah, it's different. It's a lot different to what I was used to before. So going off of your first point about, how much do you work on mental preparation, and obviously physical, I think everybody at a certain point, everybody does physical preparation, because it's a must. And if you don't, then maybe you start losing a bit of performance at the end of the race. And I think for 95% of the drivers, they do physical preparation. How much you do, that's up to you. But yeah, I think mental preparation is where you really make the biggest difference. Because yeah, you can show up to the race weekend and do absolutely nothing, or you can show up to the race weekend knowing you did so much beforehand. And that was something for me, like at the beginning of this year, that I never had before, and it was quite strange. I never actually told anybody about it. So this is the first time I actually saying something about it, but I felt like I wasn't doing enough before the race weekend. So I was going into the race weekend already, second guessing a few things that I never really had before. Although I was working physically and a bit mentally, I felt like I was going into the race weekend not 100% prepared of what I could have been. So maybe I was more prepared personally. Yeah, okay. Maybe I was more prepared than 95 of the other guys, but I felt that I was so underprepared from myself that I wasn't 100% fulfilling what I thought I was capable of doing away from the track. And that was really difficult at the beginning of the year, because then obviously you start doubting a bit, and then it's a bit difficult mentally to deal with that. But fortunately, that was January time, when also I was moving up to a new category, and it was super difficult.
KZ.
KZ, to get going in that category was quite, like, if we look at the first few races, it wasn't a good time to remember, to be honest. But that was.
I think you like to remember how it went afterwards.
Yeah, how it went afterwards is nice. It's nice to look back on. Although things could have gone a bit better, I think it's nice to see where we started and where we ended up. But yeah, I mean, at the beginning of the year, I was struggling a bit with that. And then I just said, I'm going to try to be the best that I can be. So, I think everything sort of changed from there, because I was spending a lot of time on social media and things like that, just unnecessarily, just because it's quite easy to, start scrolling, and then you continue scrolling and scrolling and scrolling, and then by the time you know it, you've been there for 2 hours, 3 hours. So
it's really quick.
That, for me, I don't like doing that at all, because I feel like I'm falling behind. Wasting time, falling behind on where
it happens to me too. So
on where I could be. So I think on a personal note, it's even now, it's how else can I improve? Can I be a better person or a better driver, more prepared for the next race or for the next test? So it's even now, okay, I think the work ethic, fortunately, that we have now, and the people around me are pushing me a lot, which is very good. But there's still some times that I think, damn, I could have worked harder, So things like that, like, I hate that. I hate knowing that I could have done more, but I didn't. And that really annoys me. So I think even now, there's still things that I can improve on, and there's still things that I'm looking, okay, how can I get better in this area? How can I get better in that area? So, as I mentioned in the very beginning, it's every sports person, I think, has that. But it's how you get around it, how you manage to reach what you think is 100% of your potential. Because you can just say, forget about it. I'm just going to rock up to the race weekend and do nothing beforehand. But especially this year, I never had it before. But I don't know if this year I just sort of realized, okay, this is what it takes, or something. I don't know. And I know I'm still going to learn so much more in the next 5-10 years. Yeah. But just as of right now, that's sort of, where mentally sort of where I am. So I think I was able to come a long way from where I started this year, but there's still like things that I think I can improve on a bit on a personal note.
But there will always be things.
Yeah,
of course.
I think it's always learning,
and I think that's the most important thing. I mean, it's because if there's nothing else to improve on, then I mean,
perfection doesn't exist.
Yeah.
So there's always something.
It's always progression. And I think if you're able to improve and be better than you were yesterday and last week and last month, that's the most important part.
Yeah, it means you're progressing. Exactly. If there's nothing else you can work on, it means you're done. It's not a good thing.
It's not a good thing. Unless you're at the top of your game, and then you just need to stay. But 9 times out of 10, that won't happen. So I think it's a good thing to have, to just continue going.
You were saying about, like, for example, the scrolling on social media. Then when you realized that you wanted to change something, how then did you actually concretely manage to do that? Did you speak with somebody? Did someone help you, or were you just saying, okay, put away my phone and I don't know, I run? I don't know. Yeah. I'm just saying, like, how because then something is, like, we say that to think something is different than to do it, no? So sometimes we say a lot of things as human beings, but then it's difficult to put them into practice. So how was it?
It's not easy. It wasn't easy, and it's not easy even now, because as you mentioned, you're not always going to be perfect. I mean, you're always going to need to improve in some areas. So,
and it's also, sorry if I interrupt you, but it's also difficult to keep up the hard work with so much consistency. Also, because we were speaking a few moments ago about how karting has a really tight schedule with a lot of races, a lot of testing. You go around every time, so it's also difficult to keep up. With that.
Yeah, but I think, if I'm being completely honest, obviously it's difficult to always stay in that rhythm of, okay, you realize you're wasting a bit of your time, so you go and do something productive. Even I think everybody would have it though. Even now, it's you realize, but sometimes it's difficult because you're right. Thinking about doing something and actually doing something are two very different things. So I think the biggest thing was, once you thought about it, think what you could be doing right now. You are scrolling through social media, but you could be on a run, or you could be in the gym, or you could be reading a book or something. I don't know. But
do you like reading?
No.
Neither do I, actually.
I really, to be honest, I only for school, or even now I'm reading a book, but very like, I've been reading it for about 2 months, not 2 months, 2 weeks, and I'm only on page like 15 or something like that.
What book? Well, it's not bad. 2 weeks?
Yeah.
But what book? I'm curious.
It's a David Goggins book. So I don't know if you've heard of him.
I heard of him, but I actually must admit don't know.
Yeah. He is actually, it's quite funny because he's like the epiphany of work ethic. Because he is like a guy that wakes up super early in the morning, goes for a run, goes to the gym. So
so you actually bought it for that?
Yeah, that's what I bought it for.
Wow.
So yeah, so that's the one book that I'm reading right now. So that's the only reason I bought it, because that's something that interests me.
Wow. That shows your determination, dedication also to this.
Yeah, because I think it shows that also, like, it's difficult to imagine that other people are going through the same thing, which I'm well aware that I know a lot of people are. But, I think from that aspect, for me, like now reading that book is good to know that, he's quite successful in his own right and other things. But I mean, seeing how he was able to change his mentality and go about things differently, I think that's quite cool and quite good to see that, okay, like he did it, because I think his story is quite cool. I haven't finished it yet, but I have
You're planning on doing it.
As I told you, I'm only on page like 15 or something like that. But I mean, I know pretty much how the book goes. But his story is quite good to see that he was able to pretty much turn his life around. And for me, that's not necessary at the moment. But I mean, the way that he was able to do it, I think there's some things that can apply to everybody, or in my case, a few things that he was able to do. So I think it's about having also balance. You have to balance your life. It can't always be one thing, because if you get too involved, or if you're overthinking things, it can put you in a very, very bad place, very difficult place.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's about finding that medium where you're able to handle a personal life and a professional life. And that also, I think that comes with the time and with maturity. And as you get older, I think it just sort of happens. But I think that's a point where, like, okay, you have obviously a profession, but also your life can't always be this one thing. You have to have,
a bit of everything.
A bit of something else to sort of reset your mind. Or, you can't be Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, you're thinking about the same thing as you wake up.
You need a balance. When you exaggerate, even if it's something you love, but it's never healthy for you to exaggerate and to...
You end up burning out.
Exactly. That's very true. So you need to sort of find that balance of when it's too much and when it's, acceptable. Because I think I think that's something that, you know, I'm still also trying to figure out a bit when it's too much or when it's
that's difficult.
That's super difficult because, and I know that's why I mentioned to you before, as you get older with maturity and as sort of things start happening, then it's a bit easier.
I think you're already very mature for the age you have, Alex. And I'm not saying it because you're on the podcast. You know, I already told you so.
Yeah. So I think it's a fine line of where it's sort of where it's sort of acceptable, and then when it's a bit too much. So at the moment, like, or not at the moment, just trying to find where that fine line is quite difficult.
Quite challenging.
It's quite challenging. At least for me, it was a bit difficult to sort of find where that is. So I think it's on a personal level, there's a few things that you can always improve on. In my case, there's a few things that I can improve on. But yeah, I think it's cool, like, to going back to the thing about, you know, having a bit of idols in their own right. So, you know, in my case, the work ethic of this guy that I was reading the book about, or even like, I really like the Kobe Bryant's. His work ethic was his work ethic was really, really good. And that's something that's like a level that it's a bit different, because obviously basketball, you know, you can't really in racing, you can't train at midnight if you want to, because
can you imagine?
Yeah.
That's
something at like 3 o'clock in the morning.
That's something I always struggled to make people understand also when I was at school, because like a lot of kids in Italy play soccer or basketball, and everyone, when I said I was karting, apart from the jokes on the fact it wasn't a sport and I got mad at it, but that's another story. But like, people said, "Oh, when do you do it?" And I said, "Well, the weekends." And they said, "Oh, but like at which time?" And I said, "No, you go there at like 8 a.m. you're in the track, and you go away at 6, 7 p.m. and you train all the day." Because people struggle to understand
that's the thing. It's
just so different.
It's different to all the other sports. So, I mean, if you wanted to train, you know, every day of the week, you realistically couldn't. So that's why it's so important to work out of the track, to be prepared for when you do actually go. So I think that's the biggest difference is, you know, compared to other sports, of course. Like, how do you manage to train as much as the others, but if it's not a possibility, you know, how do you sort of deal with that? So yeah. I think, I was talking about the Kobe Bryant, Mamba mentality thing. So yeah, I appreciate that sort of work ethic a lot. And like, managing to find a lifestyle that obviously is suitable for you, but still keeping that like high performance that he had, I think it's really cool. It's really it's a good target to aim for. Yeah, because even though you might not be able to reach it, I think it's a good baseline, or good a good achievement.
A good benchmark.
If you're able to get even close to that sort of work ethic. So yeah,
with regard to, no, did you have a question, Nikki, first? No, because I was thinking when you said about the balance, what else do you have in your life that you really like apart from racing? And also, you mentioned, for example, school. How did you deal with that, being always traveling a lot for the races?
There's not that much else really that goes on in my life, because okay, obviously I have school that's obviously very important. That my mom keeps me very honest with that side of things. But then, you know, there's a few other hobbies that I have, but nothing really consistent, and they're just a bit to fill the time, if I have any extra. So,
have you ever wanted to try any other sport?
Not really. I played football for a little bit.
Oh, here in Italy?
No, back home. When I was like, when I first started, I was doing football and karting at the same time, and there came a point where like I had to choose one.
No
I
doubt.
chose, yeah. So I don't think I was bad at football. I just think I wasn't the best. So it wasn't really my thing. But anyway, my mom was quite disappointed when
Really?
yeah, because she's from Colombia. So they are obviously they're quite she's very very enthusiastic in football, especially the World Cup. So when I decided to call it quits on on football, she wasn't best pleased. No.
She follows you a lot, also
Of course.
throughout the race.
Of course, yeah, she does. So she's always there. She's very very supportive. But both of my parents are, and my whole family, my sisters, they're very supportive. So I'm quite lucky from that aspect, to be honest, to have them always pushing me. So going back to your comment before, I don't really have much else. So yeah, that's the thing. That's why it's so easy to let your mind drift off on what can I be doing now. Going back to the point from before, what. So that's why if you had obviously other things filling the day, then you wouldn't really think about that.
Sure.
But for me, since I'm doing online school,
Oh,
so I'm not actually doing
okay.
proper in-person school, which
That's tough.
good and bad. Yeah, it's good because it's flexible,
Yeah.
but then you have no social interaction. And going back to the same point, your mind can drift off so quickly on other things. So I think in the beginning, I think it was a good decision. After a while, you start to rethink the decision that you made. But anyway, we're here now, so we have to deal with it. But it's not ideal because obviously you don't have any interaction with other people at school, because in the other hobbies that I have, that when I am able to find time to do them, there's people, and I have some friends that I'm able to go to and talk to about something else apart from racing.
Yeah, because also that is something that we often talk about this in our episodes with other guests, about how maybe sometimes, for example, also in your case, that you live this with your family, then sometimes it's also important maybe to have another person to speak about
something else.
Yeah, because you always share everything with them, and it's nice. It's a very nice thing, and also lucky to do it. But
if you're always sort of in that circle of
exactly,
you can never really express other things that you. So I think that's the thing. And at the track, especially at the go-kart track, there's a lot of people that I grew up with, essentially, because starting from mini cards going to OKJ, and in my case I did KZ as well this year, but there are people that started with me in mini, which now there's a few people that I'm still in contact with, which is nice. And obviously being here in Monza, it's a lot of them live in Desenzano, which isn't too far. So sometimes I'm able to go down there and sort of have a nice weekend or something away from the track. So I mean, it's those type of things, but other than that, it's very minimal, the other things that I do apart from racing, because it's so time consuming. I mean, it's the time off that you have. I mean, okay, you're only on the weekends, but then you still have to be doing work, to prepare for the actual race weekend or practice or upcoming season. So yeah, it's not easy to find sort of the time, and when you do, it's not easy to decide how you're going to use that time as well.
Spend that time.
You mentioned social media earlier, and I had a curiosity. I was just scrolling through your Instagram, and it seemed like there was someone managing it. Was it you posting? Is it you posting? Or
it is me? It is me. Yeah, it is.
I told you. I told her, and she said, "I'm not sure." And I said, "I think I did. I didn't actually know, but I think it's Alex."
Yeah. Last year we had a bit of help doing it.
Okay.
You did a really good job doing it. But this year it was all from me. That's a tough thing as well, because obviously it's easy to post on a race weekend that's going great. But on a race weekend that's going not so great, it's not the nicest thing in the world to sort of not so easy day here and wherever, to sort of go through that and post consistently as well. It's not super easy. But yeah, I'm doing it. My mom helps me sometimes, like if it's really a day that I really
you really don't want to.
But 9 times out of 10 it's me posting. So yeah, keeping up with that side of thing as well, and trying to like grow that as well. It's not easy. It's not easy because to be completely honest, I have no clue on the ins and outs of that type of social media and that kind of stuff. Obviously, you know, I know how it works and all, but I don't know tips and tricks that maybe a social media manager might know. So yeah, it's not exactly easy to, because a lot of the drivers have some.
Yeah, in fact, that's
why I asked.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
I basically see
also little
7-year-old kids that have a social media manager and everyone. And so like, obviously.
Yeah, because I think nowadays you're obligated to, because if not, everybody else does. So yeah, maybe it's something that I need to look into. But yeah, it's.
But if you like posting,
like it. That was my question. Do you like, apart from social media, also the media part of motorsport? We know it's very important nowadays.
Yeah, I mean,
you were not so convinced from your face.
I like responding to the messages and that kind of stuff, because it's nice to sort of
interact.
Yeah, to interact. Posting is nice. Sometimes when you really don't want to post, though, it's not. I don't mind it.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, it's not ideal. Let's say it that way for me. But you know, it's not like a burden or anything for me. I don't mind it. But it's something that if I had a bit of help, I think it would have been a bit easier to sort of manage. Yeah, but then again, I have some guidance from other people, fortunately, that are, you know, telling me what is the right thing to post and what is the wrong thing to post, because you can go wrong quite quickly, especially nowadays.
It's very easy
if you say
to
something wrong, it's very easy to, you know, ruin your reputation and your image. So I think it's from that aspect, luckily I have a few people that are helping me to know what I can and cannot do.
But this is incredible, because as Nikki said, a lot of like young drivers already have social media managers, and I admire you for doing this on your own, because I just see it on myself, and I never reached your levels. When I'm on a race weekend, and I like social media, I work with social media, but when I was little, something I like to do, but from then growing up, I just didn't want to, because you're there to race, you have your mind on that. And so I admire you, but I even admire you more for the self-composure that you have. It makes sense in English, right? Self-composure. And I wanted to ask how you managed to have that, and to always be also very solid when you speak, very also because, as you said, it's pretty easy to fall on the other side in today's world,
but also it's a sport where you can get really
a lot of emotions, and obviously this is something I remember, and I don't want necessarily to speak about that, because it's not our aim to like go into something specific, but it's like more of an anecdote and something that actually impressed me about you. So I hope it's fine
Thank
for you. No, because last year, the European Championship.
Yeah.
And as I said, don't worry, I don't want to get in the...
No, I was going to mention that anyway, because
Okay, because... So, can I briefly explain, or if you prefer that...
No, you can explain.
So, okay, I'll try to be brief. It's not my strongest point, but I'll try. So, Alex was fighting for the European title in OK in your rookie season. Okay. And I remember last race, you had one in Sweden, right? In Kristianstad, the penultimate race. Then you came to the final round in Franciacorta. In the final, I don't remember where you were starting, but you were quite behind. 10th?
9th.
9th. And after a few laps, I was not in Christianstad. I was on track in Franciacorta. I was looking back from home. He was P1 after a few laps. Crazy start, crazy overtakes in the beginning, very, very like strong. And he was P1 with quite a margin on who followed, and he was mathematically the champion. Then there was another driver of a KR satellite team in P2, and Keen was P3, Nakamura. He was your teammate. And then a team order arrived, and the driver who was in P2 led by Keen, and like this, Keen won the European title, despite you winning 2 races. And I remember, like if it was yesterday, that in the last corner you looked behind and you realized what had happened, and you didn't even celebrate the victory. You were like, maybe you also did like a little thing with your. And when I was home, let's leave aside the team order thing, but I was saying, oh my god, how must he feel now inside that helmet after all he did to win that championship? Then I watched the podium. I watched your interview with T-Cart, and you were sorry, you were so self-composed even there. You said, we'll have to debrief afterwards, but you were also so sportsman, like congratulating with Keen, and I was so impressed. And I was so also afraid that something could change inside you because of that, because I felt that was not so right. But as I said, don't want to get into that. I just want to talk about how you felt, not about the team order thing. Yeah. Because I was impressed. I'm sorry if I took a lot of time, but I'm honest. And I also remembered I wrote a message to you on Instagram, but you never saw it, I think. No, it's just because I was so impressed about how you managed to cope with that. And so I wanted to ask you, how was it? How did you manage to?
Well, I think if we look back on it now, I mean, we have to also consider where we started off the season, because remember, the European Championship is 4 rounds. And in round 1, I scored 0. So I was essentially last, or tied on last in the championship. And then I had a pretty good round 2. Obviously, as you mentioned, a win in Sweden. And then it into the last round, I had an outside chance of winning the championship. I needed a lot of things to go my way. And starting the weekend, it really didn't, because the speed was decent, but nothing special. It was fine in practice, and then arrived to qualifying, and for some reason, the pace wasn't amazing anymore. And then unfortunately, I had a DNF in the first heat, which put me already on the back foot for the rest of the weekend. And then fortunately, I was able to manage and do a few good heats to be starting 9th in the final. But 9th is still quite far back. So I had the mentality before the final. I had nothing to lose, because honestly, finishing 3rd in the championship didn't really bother me. Finishing 2nd in the championship didn't really bother me. I only wanted to win the championship. And in order for me to win the championship, I had to win the race. And obviously, Keen had to be 3rd. And I think Joe was also fighting. He couldn't score. So a lot of things had to happen in my favor. At the starts, to be honest, I sort of helped myself and a few other people to get to the front. I just put it that way, because by the end of lap 2, I was leading.
I remember it was amazing.
Yeah, and then I was able to get a gap, and then I just managed a bit from there. And I wasn't looking back, but I had a reference coming out of the last corner, or second to last corner, who was in second, and I saw the whole race. The other guy was in second, and then on the last lap, I took a look back and I saw that he was no longer at second, and it was Keen in second. And I didn't actually know what had happened.
Okay, so
I was angry when I crossed the line, because I put my hand up. It was only when I came in the pit when my mechanic explained to me what actually happened.
Oh, he explained.
So that was difficult to deal with, because knowing that you did all that, and then for something like that to happen, it didn't really feel right. But I think the way of looking at it was, I did everything that I could.
So
there was nothing that I could have done differently. So there was no reason. Exactly. It was completely outside of my control. And it was nothing that I could have done. So in the post-race interview, to date, I think it's probably one of the best interviews that I've done, because to deal with that emotion of just losing a European Championship by 2 points because of something that happened in the race, it wasn't easy at all. And like having to hold back those emotions and sort of explain how everything was from a personal side, but a respectable, because at the end of the day, you have to also commend the other guys that did a good job, because Kian was, I think, on the podium in all 4 rounds. Joe had a bad last round, but apart from that, he was super consistent. So from that side of things, you also had to respect the job that they did. But it wasn't easy to deal with at all. And to sort of have the perspective of, wow, we just lost the European Championship by 2 points. This is, the world is ending. You could have also shifted the perspective to, okay, we lost the European Championship by 2 points. What could we have done differently throughout the championship to get back those 2 points? And I think that was important for me to realize, okay, this happened, but what could I do differently next time for it not to happen again? And that was a prime example of maximizing every single race that you go on track. Because now, obviously I don't think about it now, but I remember thinking about it then, knowing 3 points that I lost super easily in round 2. But I didn't want to overtake the guy in front of me because I was on the podium, and I'd never been on the podium in FIA before. And I was quite not a lot quicker than him, but if I would have overtaken him, he would have lost a bit the rhythm, and I would have been able to go into second place. So that was something that, like, even though it's something new, you're on the podium for the first time or you're going for the first win, it made me realize that every time I go on the track, I have to give it everything and take every single opportunity, because if you don't, then you're going to look back on it and think, oh, what if I would have done that? That's something that I really don't like at all. And I know a lot of people obviously don't like it. It's looking back on something, knowing that you could have done something different to change the outcome. And that was important for me to understand.
But you know what? As I say again, even now hearing you talk about it, it's also a bit emotional actually, because I think it's difficult, and I put myself into your shoes. But I also want to say, I think that sometimes, maybe, okay, not in an interview, but it's good to let yourself go. I think that as human beings, we need it. We can't always only be straight. I mean, with this, I'm saying, your behavior was perfect, but sometimes it's something I feel that I'm saying as if I was like I don't know, I'm not someone you need to look up to, but I like an older brother.
Yeah.
Sometimes with your family, your friends, I think it's good to let go a bit of because you're very, as I said, analytical, very straight, very educated, and you are an example. Just, I think I want to say, because I don't know, I have this feeling sometimes that you keep a lot inside. Maybe, I don't know if this is
that's true. That's very true. It's very true, but sometimes it's best, especially in an interview, because as you mentioned before, it's something that if you say something out of place,
the reputation.
Exactly. Your image can go down very quickly. So I think it's a very fine line. You have to, know how to conduct your interviews. And actually, it's quite funny because in the past, like when I first started, I was super camera shy. My responses were extremely short. Looking back on interviews, I think from 2018. Okay. There's an interview in, I think, Lonato when I finished third. It's the worst interview. It's like all my answers were like one or two words.
Wow.
And I think it was T-card. I think it was T-card. Yeah. But it's funny to look back on, because then obviously with time and obviously being in front of the camera for a longer period of time, then you sort of get used to it.
Oh, so it was experience, or
it's more. No, I was never media trained. Never media trained. I mean, I don't know how it just sort of happened where it was no longer scared to be behind the camera. It was more of it's difficult for it to be natural. I don't think it can ever be natural to sort of be behind the camera, but as natural as possible. But yeah, you have to going back to the point. You have to know how to conduct your interview and be politically correct in everything that you say. And sometimes you have to hold things in, but I can hold things in behind the camera or when I'm in front of the camera, but then when I'm in the tent or around the people that are close to me, then I can say what I think, because in that moment I'm not
that's important.
Yeah, exactly.
To have those people.
Exactly. It's important to have those people that you can sort of express your emotions to, because sometimes, as you said before, it's such a your adrenaline is very high when you're racing, and emotions can get
really intense.
yes, very, very intense. They can get quite flared up very quickly. So sometimes you can say things that really in retrospect you look back on and think, maybe it wasn't best to say that. And fortunately for me, I haven't experienced anything like that, but I sort of know the importance of saying the right thing, because if you say the wrong thing, it's sometimes not best.
Good.
I wanted to ask you something that I think it's a little more happy because obviously you're a Mercedes junior.
Yes.
And I thought, what was it like to receive that call, or like who told you that there was interest? How, because you're still really, really young.
Yeah.
So
it was in 2019 actually. But at that time I was I'm always saying, looking back on it, because I never really got to fully appreciate the wow, because now I think it's an amazing experience, and I'm so grateful and thankful that they were able to, or I was able to be in the right place, at the right time, and sort of have those connections with those people, and be able for them to support me now and guide me in the right direction, because that's super important when you have the guidance of a team so successful like them. They know the ins and outs of motorsports, right? So they know what's best for me, and then you sort of just have to follow from what they're saying. So from that aspect, I never really, I think because I was a bit too young. I was 11 years old.
That's crazy to imagine.
I was 11 years old, so I didn't fully grasp the
what it meant,
what it meant in the very beginning. Now I understand the importance of it, and the amount of gratitude that I have for it has increased every year, because the more I mature, the more I realize, wow, okay, this is a once in a lifetime opportunity. So to be honest, in the very beginning, when it sort of first started coming about, which was at the end of the season, and unfortunately at that time I had very good results. It was an experience that we weren't really expecting, because for us it was like from a car park in the Caribbean, from Trinidad to racing in Barbados to racing in the US. We never really thought of that until it actually happened, and it was like, wow, okay, now
what happened.
now it's the real deal, so that was a pretty, it was a big eye opener. I'd put it that way. It was a big eye opener to say, this is where it really starts now then. So yeah, that was sort of how it all came about in the very beginning. But yeah, as I said before, like the more time passes, the more I really appreciate the importance of it.
But do you remember the moment where they told you, who told you, your father, or
I don't remember.
I don't remember. That's
remember,
crazy. It means it's something like you were very little in it.
I remember.
Wow.
I think I remember signing like a paper, but I don't remember what it was, because it.
Yeah.
I remember taking a picture, shaking the guy that manages the junior program. His name is Gwen LeGroux. I remember having a picture with him inside the truck, shaking his hand. So maybe that was where it was solidified, the deal. But I don't remember anything else about signing, or who actually. I'm sure it was my dad, maybe that would have told me. But it's crazy to think back on, because it's something that is so important, but I don't actually remember
it's like those things that are also so part of your life since you were little, that you struggle.
Of course.
Yeah.
It's crazy. This is incredible, and honestly, um, as a podcast, the past, we always want to tell the stories, the anecdotes, and we could stay here hours and hours talking.
Yes, we could.
But we hope there will be also other occasions to pass by again for you here, because we told a lot today, but we didn't tell a lot of other things.
Yeah.
So we hope you will pass by again. Now we are in the final stint of this episode, and we always have a question that we save for last, because it's about also a bit about us. But first, I wanted to link back to one last thing, because at the beginning you said about how when you obtain a good result, how back home it's you go everywhere in the newspaper also probably. How was it also when you were little to see all that attention? And as we were talking before, on one hand the motivation, on one hand maybe the pressure also with Mercedes. How do you deal with those two things? Because I think you have a bit of both, and as you said, it's a matter of perspective, but it's not always easy to have the best perspective.
Yeah, it's never easy to have the best perspective. And I think that's where it's important to have the right people around you to guide you in that right direction. But from the beginning, especially in that moment when we were signed into Mercedes when I was 11 years old, and the amount of publicity, fortunately, that I was able to get from that was amazing. Back home. So sort of seeing that at 11 years old was like, wow,
I mean, 11 years old, you go to school.
Yeah.
You I don't know.
Exactly that.
You're
I mean,
so awkward at 11 years old.
Yeah, exactly.
Usually.
It's something that like an 11-year-old doesn't know how to react to that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, to tell you how I felt, it's difficult to say, because I didn't know how to feel, because I had
Everything
it was
coming like
everything
this.
at like 1,000,000 miles per hour. So and that was also in the very beginning when I didn't know really how to deal with that. Now, obviously, throughout the years,
You learned a lot.
You learn how to manage that. But dealing with that, and then as you also mentioned, the psychological part where you can start to apply pressure when you have a real big following behind you, or when you have in my case a sponsor like Mercedes behind you, you can have two very different perspectives. And I'm just going back to the same thing about having the right perspective. But, at the end of the day, they are trying to help you and support you to reach your goal. And you can either look at it from a positive way, or you can look at it from a negative way. And if you look at it from the positive way, you can take all their experience and all their feedback and apply it. Or you can take it in a negative way and start to think about, oof, the amount of pressure that you have, or these people are watching, I need to perform. It shouldn't. I think you always have a certain amount of pressure from yourself, from your sponsor, from your family, from everywhere.
Sure.
But it's, if you're able to turn that pressure into motivation, or if you're able to turn that pressure into making you take the next step, then I think it's a good sort of pressure, because there's two, yeah, exactly. There's two types of pressure. There's one pressure that holds you back, and then there's the other that pushes you forward. So it's it's something that you need to learn how to deal with it, especially in the beginning, and at such a young age as well. How to deal with that sort of pressure wasn't easy for me. But once you learn and start to manage it, then it sort of becomes a little bit more natural. But pressure is never natural. So you always have to find a way to work around it, and make sure that it's the pressure that motivates you, and not the one that holds you back.
Inhibits you.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
Wow. Thanks for sharing all of this with us. And
Thank you very much. I hope I get to come back soon
I-
because I have a lot of stories that we weren't able to fit in this time.
Whenever you want, we will always welcome you. Before this, though, I leave the word to Nikki for the last question of this episode.
Because we always ask this last question to all of our guests. We call our podcast The Pass because we wanted to bring circuit track life close to normal daily life.
Of course.
And so obviously the pass is when you overtake someone on track, which happens quite often. But then in real life, you can overcome a fear, overcome a moment of difficulty, overcome even yourself. So if we ask you, what's the pass, the one thing that you're really proud of, that you're really like, I did it.
Yeah, you probably have quite a few, but the first one that pops up in your mind, maybe for the moment, because
it's racing related or personal life related.
The one you feel is well, you can say both, one racing, one personal. But if you had to say the pass between racing and personal, I don't know. Feel free to say.
This is it's a difficult question. It's a difficult question.
That's why we saved it for the last.
I think from if we look at just from a racing perspective, I think it was the victory that I had earlier this year in Spain, because that was such a roller coaster of events.
Yeah, let's just say that it was Alex's first European Championship race in KZ2 in the shifter class. Yeah. And I think maybe the fourth or third or fifth race.
I think it was fourth one in
and
general.
I was there. I am lucky enough to have witnessed this with my own eyes, and it was literally impressive from the start to the overtakes you did in that race, and how you were just... I really saw, because you've always been fast since I know you, since I watch you. But I always said it to you also at the beginning of this year. Maybe there were some times where you had the speed, but you were missing maybe something else.
Some things, and making the right decisions.
Exactly. I think that race, nobody could have stopped you because you were so determined. And it's something difficult to explain. And I'm not, maybe I'm not the best expert in this sport, but I think I saw a lot of race, and also I'm very passionate. So that helps me. And I could see it. I could see it in the way you drove in that corners. And
I mean, that was like a moment where it was like you're mentioning, I did it because it was such a tough weekend, but also stint in KZ up until that point, because it was very, very, very up and down. And that weekend I was super fast, but there was just a few things that I was doing wrong. And if we take Sunday morning, we had the pre-final. That was, from my end, it was quite a bad race. And then, having to sort of clear that from your mind, but it was almost like clearing the good things from that race and using the bad things as motivation, because that was the biggest difference for me, because I was so motivated by that pre-final, because I did such a bad race that I said, I don't want to go out like that. I want to leave here knowing that I did everything that I could and did everything in my power to leave on a positive note. And I knew if I was able to do that, we would be able to do a good result. I didn't fully expect to win the race, to be honest. But when I got into second, then I realized, I could, I could actually do it. That was a moment where I thought, okay, this is on. And then obviously winning the race, and there was also an amazing experience, because it was winning. I essentially won in every category that I raced in as well, which is such a cool.
That's true. You won in Mini, OKJ, OK, and KZ2. I never thought about that. And it's also something quite unique, because it's
easy to.
As far as it's difficult to win, it's even more difficult to win again.
So that was nice as well. But I think I mentioned that race, but also the race that I did in Franciacorta, the last year was quite nice, but we already spoke a bit about that. But this year, the World Championship final.
Oh yeah.
I only did 7 laps. But I was so happy by the way I drove those 7 laps that even though I didn't finish the race, it felt like the same of winning the world championship for me.
This is so
because
nice.
Yeah.
Like on a personal level.
on a personal note, there was no, in my opinion, there was obviously winning the race would have been the best way to leave go-karting. But apart from that, there was no better way to leave for me, because my biggest fear going into that race was leaving knowing I could have done more. And before, obviously, that weekend was very complicated, very, very complicated. And for some reason, again, I was quite fast in practice, arrived to qualifying in the races and very average pace. So I think I was starting like 13th or something like that.
I wanted to tell.
I don't know why I don't remember, but yeah, something like that. 13th or something like that. And then, within 8 laps,
You were P3.
P3, and the 2 guys in front ended up crashing into each other. But that's a bit more unfortunate. But
but I thought about that with the benefit of hindsight. I thought,
but it would have. But anyway, I mean, that's a moment where I felt that, I did everything
best.
I did everything. I did everything that I could give, and that was most important for me, knowing that I gave it my absolute all. And if I would have left that race saying, if I would have overtaken this guy 1 lap earlier, maybe I would have been in a better position, because that for me was, as I told you, was a big fear of mine to leave like that. So, being able to come forward every single lap and then being, in the top 3 positions within 7 laps was one of the best 7 laps I've done in my life, to be honest. So that was also really, really nice. A very a nice moment where I felt very accomplished. Although the end result isn't what you always want, I think it's something about, once you give your best in something, sometimes the results are a bit irrelevant when you know that you give your absolute all, and everybody around you knows, okay, that's everything that you could give. I think, sometimes it's to look at the bigger picture. But the biggest thing, like something that I like to remind myself most of the time, is I don't want to be older and looking back on this time knowing I could have done more. So I'm here now. I'm sitting here now. So
we're very happy about this.
Yeah. I'm sitting here now having this conversation with you. And I realized that, okay, I'm here now, so I'm trying to maximize everything that I can, because I want to leave, or I want to, grow, knowing that I give everything in everything that I do. I give my absolute all, and that's really important for me, because I don't want to look back on life in general, knowing that I could have done more, but I didn't. And that's something that I like to remind myself quite often, because it's quite easy to start to get a bit lazy, and so for me it's important.
But we like to say that motorsport is a metaphor for life for us, and that's why also we started this podcast to make people understand more about our world. And I think that we talked about a lot of aspects that show this, and also your maturity, the way you speak also proves this, how you can use this sport to grow, and also to apply some lessons from the track to your daily life.
It teaches you a lot of life lessons, for sure.
And also, we should close, but I don't want to. We should, because you mentioned the fear. Just one last thing. You mentioned fear of, you had the fear of leaving without having done your best. What relationship do you have with fear? Have you ever also had fear on the racing side? Because it's something that really makes me curious, also as a driver.
No, I mean, you don't really think about.
Obviously, think about
that. You don't really think about that, because I think once you do start thinking about that, maybe it's not really for you, because that's something that can definitely hold you back, especially like in a race scenario. Sure. So when I mention fear, it's more from a personal aspect.
Sure, not that kind of.
So sometimes I guess, for example, if some things are quite hectic at the track, or something, yeah, on the track, I mean, maybe you might experience a moment or two of fear, but I think once you start having that, maybe it's not, yeah, maybe it's not, yeah, maybe it's not completely for you, because that, as I mentioned, that can really, it can really hamper you. Yeah. So fortunately, for me, I don't experience that, and I don't think about that either.
Okay.
Because if you start thinking about it, then you've lost the plot a little bit. But I think the relationship with fear is a very fine line. You can use it to a disadvantage for sure. Obviously overthinking it, but then also knowing the risks that you take in a general day, then you appreciate some things more once you for example, in my case, I'm aware obviously of the risks in motorsport in general. But I think it makes me appreciate the small things in not only in racing, but maybe, let's say, in life a little bit more. Just because I'm able to correlate that from my racing to normal everyday life, which I think is pretty cool.
That's also special.
Very special. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you, Alex. Thank you for this track talk. We're really
Thank
grateful.
you very much. I enjoyed it a lot, and as I mentioned before, I'd like to come back on to tell you a few more stories, because I think we missed out on a few.
Yeah.
But we've been talking for a while now, so I'm looking at the clock.
I think we're the longest episode up until now, definitely. But yeah, that's also special.
A pleasure. So
yeah,
thank you very much.
I would sit here again, but
yeah, we could stay here a long time.
Yeah. I think they will close us inside this beautiful track in the Temple of Speed. But yeah, now we need to go. Thank you, everyone, for listening. We hope you liked this episode as much as we had. So I thank Alex a lot. I thank the Autodromo Nazionale Monza, especially Matteo Losa, Matteo Principe, for giving us this beautiful spot. You can't see the track because it's it got dark, but we're here, and hope to see you soon, Alex, again. And
best of luck.
Best of luck for your future goals.
And thank you for having me.
No, thank you. It was just a pleasure. Stay tuned. So bye from Mattia
and Nicole.
Bye from Alex.
Thank you. See you to the next Track Talk, The Pass.
Wow. Because in some way, The Pass is also about you.